My name is Eleanor Gray. I'm 60 years old, and I will tell you a story I have never told anyone before. Not my children, not my neighbors, not even the priest who begged me to confess my sins. This secret has burned inside me for decades, clawing at my heart every single night I close my eyes. You see, the world looks at me and thinks I am just an ordinary old granny, soft, harmless, and gentle. But behind these wrinkles are scars no one sees, scars carved by betrayal, cruelty, and the kind of family wounds that never truly heal. I had a sister once, Sarah. People thought we were inseparable, but one day, she looked at me with eyes colder than death itself, and said, "It would be a gift if you died." I felt my soul shatter. She didn't just take away my dignity with those words, she took away the meaning of family. And so, with trembling hands and a broken heart, I cut off all financial support I had given her for years. It was the only way I could survive her poison, but the truth, my dear listener, is far darker. What happened after that decision changed everything. It tore apart our bloodline, unearthed secrets I never wanted to face, and forced me to do something I can never undo. So tell me, are you ready to hear the rest of my cursed story? If you wish to hear more of my stories, please subscribe to my channel. They always tell you that memory softens the edges of pain. They are liars. I remember things so sharp they cut my tongue when I try to speak. I remember my mother's hands calloused, small braiding my hair and whispering that family is a safe harbor. I remember my father teaching me to count coins before I could count stars. I remember Sarah and me as children, two ragged girls sharing a single slice of bread and laughing as if tomorrow would always be kind. We grew up poor, proud in a way that hurt. When I married Thomas, he brought steady hands and a stubborn heart. He brought a roof that did not leak every winter. We had 2 children, Anna and Michael. I worked nights folding hospital laundry, days mending clothes, squeezing pennies until they begged mercy. I gave everything I had to build a life that did not wobble. That was my vow, to keep my little ship afloat, no matter the storm. Sarah was always there at the edges of that ship, a smaller boat tethered to ours. She had talent sharp, reckless like a knife and a mouth that charmed when she chose to. For years I slid her money in envelopes, paid rent, sent it for food, for odds and ends, a car repair here, a heating bill there. It felt like the right thing. We were sisters. Blood had been my justification. I told myself that helping her was like watering the root that kept us all standing. But roots rot quietly. Little things began to show, a missed phone call, a lie on the holidays, a promise broken and not mended. The first time I saw anger flare in Sarah's face instead of mischief, I blamed stress, blamed life. When Thomas died, I thought grief had thrown shadows over both our hearts and that time would turn them back to light. I was generous then, not only because I could spare a coin, but because the idea of family falling apart felt like sacrilege. The turning point came slow as winter. I noticed small betrayals. The rent I paid and yet a new dress in her photos. The groceries I sent, and a new phone flashing in the background. I asked. She smiled and lied like it was a talent she had perfected. I told myself not to worry, to mind my own bones, but guilt is a patient thing. I asked again. Her answers hardened. Then came the whisper of scandal money vanishing from places you cannot see. Debts paid in one direction and hidden thefts in another. I confronted her once, holding a bank statement, like a confession to be read aloud. She laughed, that same laugh that once soothed my child fears, and told me I was old, forgetful, jealous. She flipped the script on me with the ease of a practiced storyteller and the ruthlessness of a thief. The words arrived on a cloudless afternoon, small and bright as an ember. We were at her kitchen table, tea gone cold between us, the radio muttering the news. I had come because Anna begged me to try to patch, to be the mother who could still bridge a rift. I sat, and I listened to her list all her grievances, my advice, my interference, the way I had managed her life. I tried to explain softly, like a hand over a wound. Instead, she looked right at me and said the thing that hollowed out my chest. It would be a gift if you died. She did not whisper it like a private prayer. She threw it at me like a stone. The world constricted to the size of that sentence. I remember the angle of the sunlight, the butter on toast, the sound of the kettle. The kitchen clock continued to breathe as if nothing monumental had happened. But something had been undone. The word gift cut through the air as if it were the final accounting of everything I had poured into that family. I could have walked away with a bruised heart and kept sending money, kept pretending the wound was superficial. Instead, between the trembling of my hands and the quiet of the afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I folded my purse closed and told myself a new truth. Love without respect is a loan you must stop giving. I canceled the checks, withdrew the envelopes, and cut off every penny of financial support that had been propping up a relationship now built on contempt. People like to think endings are loud. Mine was a small, administrative cruelty forms signed, transfers stopped, automatic payments canceled. It felt clinical and righteous, like a bandage being ripped off in one clean motion. For days I sat with my decision like a child sits with a newly acquired secret. I told no one. I watched Sarah's eyes when she discovered the silence in her mailbox and the coldness in her bank account. She called me names I did not know I had earned. She yelled at the grandchildren. She cried to neighbors. She accused me of betrayal in a language that should have belonged only to me. What I did not expect was how swiftly the house of cards would begin to fall apart. Secrets that had been lying dormant for decades stirred as if the stopping of money had been a bell rung under a deep sleep. People who had been complicit quietly taking, ignoring, ensuring their own comfort began to look sideways at one another. Friends who once smiled on us now crossed the street. Old debts, unpaid favors, and hidden letters were pulled into the light. They say money reveals character. I had believed we were made of kendercloth. I was wrong. The revelations came in small humiliations first. A neighbor's timid question, a church lady's concerned stare, then in whispers that circled like vultures who had been using whom, who had kept secrets, whose choices had been made at whose expense. One evening, when the sky had the bruise color of late autumn, I went into Sarah's empty bedroom, the one she had left in a hurry last winter, and opened a drawer I had never opened before. Inside, beneath a stack of letters tied with faded ribbon, lay an envelope with my name written in Sarah's slanted hand. The flap was unsealed, as if it had been opened and then carelessly dropped back. My heart thudded like a trapped bird. I slid my fingers beneath the paper, and there, tucked inside, was a single photograph I had not seen in 40 years, and beneath it a scrap of writing in a handwriting I once loved and once feared. I do not know why I read it. Perhaps I wanted to prove to myself that the worst had already been said. Perhaps I hoped for an apology. The words on that scrap were not what I expected. They were a key and also a lock. And just as I understood what those words meant to what they pointed to, what they accused, I heard the front door slam upstairs, and the sound of a car pulling away fast enough to be angry. I held the photograph in my hand and felt the world pivot beneath me. The truth that had been only rumor in my mind now had a face. What I had done by cutting off the money had not been an end. It was an awakening. But the rest will make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty, about forgiveness, about what family can do when it is desperate. Cliffhanger, I turned the photograph over with fingers that would not steady, and the name written on the back was a name I had buried the day I married Thomas. The name on the back of that photograph froze me. James Whitaker. It had been 40 years since I last spoke that name aloud, and yet, there it was, written in Sarah's hand, under the photograph of a face I once loved so deeply it nearly destroyed me. James was not my husband. He was the man before the one my parents had forbidden, the one the town whispered about, the one whose touch had promised fire, and whose lies had nearly consumed me whole. I thought I had buried every trace of him when I chose Thomas, when I walked down the aisle with trembling hands and told myself I wanted safety over passion, stability over ruin. And yet, here he was, resurrected in a crumbling envelope tucked into Sarah's drawer. I stared at the picture until my eyes blurred. James, young and wild, hair unruly, smile crooked. It was the exact smile that once convinced me to run away from home at 17, to dream of lives built far from this suffocating town. But what was it doing here? In Sarah's possession, my hands shook as I unfolded the scrap of paper beneath it. The note was brief, hurried, and ugly in its truth. She never knew, and she never can. If you tell her, you'll destroy everything. It wasn't signed, but I knew James's writing as well as I knew the lines of my own palm. The words rattled in my bones. She never knew. Who was she? Was it me? Was it our mother? Or, God forbid, was it about Anna, my daughter? I sat back in Sarah's room, the silence heavy as stone, and realized something. My sister had been hiding more than money. She had been hiding my past, my sins, and perhaps her own. That evening, the phone rang. I didn't answer, but the machine picked it up. Her voice came through Sarah's voice, bitter, choked. You think you can punish me, Eleanor? You think cutting me off erases the past? You have no idea what I know. You cut the money. You cut me. Fine. But when the truth comes out, don't say I didn't warn you. The line went dead. I remember sitting in the dark, the photograph on my lap, and whispering to myself, what truth? But I already knew. It was about James. It was always about James. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia. I imagined Sarah walking into my church on Sunday, waving that photograph in front of the congregation. I pictured her at Anna's house, whispering secrets into my daughter's ear. I feared the collapse of everything I had built since the day I married Thomas. You see, my children, Anna and Michael, they never knew about James. They never knew how close I came to throwing my life away on him. They only knew their father, Thomas, the steady man who raised them with gentle discipline and quiet love. To tarnish his memory with the truth of James, it would shatter them. One night, unable to sleep, I went to the attic and dug through a box I hadn't touched in decades. Letters bound with twine. My own. Proof of a G. The words blurred as I read them, but their meaning pierced like a blade. Eleanor, you raised a child who is never truly yours to claim. One of your children belongs to James, not Thomas. You always wondered why he looked at you that way, why he lingered so close to me. You thought you knew love, but you never knew the whole truth. And now, so do I. I dropped the letter onto the table as if it had burned my hands. My chest felt hollow, as though my heart had been scooped out. My breath came ragged, shallow. Could it be true? Could everything I had built, everything I had believed about my family, be a lie stitched together by silence? Anna, Michael. My children, my flesh and blood. And now this letter suggested that one of them might not belong to Thomas at all, that James had marked my life in a way I could never escape. I wanted to deny it, to tear the letter apart and tell myself it was just Sarah's venom, her spite twisting old memories into poison. But the photograph of James in her drawer, the note in his handwriting, the letters I had hidden in my attic, all of it whispered the same unbearable possibility. I thought of Anna's eyes, green, like mine. I thought of Michael's jawline, sharp and stubborn, so much like James's had been. My mind began to weave patterns where none might exist, searching for proof in freckles, in smiles, in gestures that now felt foreign. The kitchen spun around me. I clutched the edge of the table and whispered aloud, "No, no, it can't be." But deep inside, a voice, the voice of a younger me, reckless and burning with forbidden love, whispered back, "What if it can?" I stumbled out of the house with the letter in my hand, desperate for air, for space, for anything that didn't smell of cigarettes and betrayal. I sat in my car, shaking, staring at the paper, as if it might change its words if I only looked long enough. I thought about confronting Sarah, but she wasn't there. She had left this letter like a bomb and vanished. Where had she gone? Did she expect me to crumble? Or was she out there, ready to expose the truth to Anna and Michael herself? For days, I lived like a shadow. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time Anna called to check on me, I studied her voice, wondering if she already knew. If she had guessed the secret I had spent a lifetime burying. Every time Michael stopped by, I stared too long, looking for James in his face. The paranoia was unbearable. I could hear Sarah's voice in my head. "You cut me off, Eleanor, but you can't cut off the past." I considered burning the letter, destroying the evidence, pretending it had never existed. But even as I held a match to its edge, my hand refused. Because what if it was true? What if, in denying it, I was erasing the one thing my child deserved to know, the truth of where they came from? That night, I dreamed of James. I saw him standing at the edge of the orchard, smiling that crooked smile. He beckoned to me, but when I ran toward him, it wasn't me who reached him, it was Sarah. She took his hand, and together they turned their backs on me, vanishing into the fog. I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, the letter still lying on my nightstand. The breaking point came when Anna stopped by unannounced one afternoon. She found me pale, trembling, clutching the envelope as if it were a lifeline. She asked, "Mom, what's wrong? What are you hiding?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to smile and say I was fine, but my lips betrayed me. They trembled, and before I could stop myself, I whispered, "Anna, there's something you don't know, something I never told you." Her eyes widened, confusion giving way to fear. "What do you mean?" I held up the letter, my hands shaking. I didn't hand it to her. Not yet, I couldn't. But the words tumbled out of me like stones pulled from the bottom of a river. "There's a chance that one of you doesn't belong to Thomas, that your father may not, that James," her face drained of color. "James? Who's James?" My tongue turned to ash. The name I had kept buried for 40 years had finally escaped my lips. Anna stared at me, her eyes searching mine, desperate for clarity. "Mom, what are you saying? Are you telling me Dad wasn't really?" I couldn't finish. I couldn't confirm. My throat closed around the truth. And then, before I could gather myself, Anna's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, and her face twisted. She turned the screen to me. A text message from an unknown number. It read, "Ask your mother who James Whittaker is. She's lied to you your whole life." Cliffhanger. I froze, realizing Sarah wasn't gone. She was watching. She was pulling the strings. When Anna showed me that text, my stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. Sarah had beaten me to it. The secret I had guarded for 40 years was no longer mine to hold. It was slipping from my hands like sand. "Who is she?" Anna demanded, her voice trembling. "Who is sending me this? Why are they saying you lied?" I couldn't answer. My tongue felt nailed to the roof of my mouth. I had faced poverty, death, widowhood, but nothing terrified me more than this moment. My child, staring at me, wondering if her entire life was built on a lie. Before I could gather words, Anna's phone buzzed again. Another message. "Your mother cut me off because she knew the truth. She pretends to be righteous, but she's a hypocrite. Ask her about James Whittaker. Ask her whose blood really runs in your veins." Anna's face turned pale, then red. Her voice cracked like glass. "Mom, what is this? Who is James Whittaker? Tell me." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The rejection stung worse than a slap. "Anna," I whispered. "Please. You don't understand." "No, Mom," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't understand, because you never told me anything. Who is this man? Why does she think he's my father?" Her words sliced through me. "She thinks not is." She was already questioning her very identity. And I had no answers. That night, after Anna stormed out of the house, I sat in the dark and cried like I hadn't cried in decades. I cried for Thomas, for the good man who had raised my children as his own. I cried for James, the wildfire I once let burn too close. And I cried for Sarah, my sister, who now wielded my past like a weapon to destroy me. By morning, Michael came. He had heard from Anna. His voice was colder than I had ever heard it. "Mom, is it true? Did Dad know? Did you know?" I wanted to tell him everything. But how could I tell my son that his family might not be what it seemed, that his Uncle James might have been more than a ghost from my past? I stalled. "Michael, please. There are things from before you were born, things I never wanted you to carry." He clenched his fists. "We have a right to know who we are." His words echoed, heavy, undeniable. They had a right, but the truth could destroy them. 2 days later, Sarah finally called. Her voice was venom, sweetened with triumph. "So, Eleanor, how are the children taking it?" I could barely breathe. "Sarah, stop this. They don't deserve your bitterness. If you want to punish me, punish me. Leave them out of it." She laughed, low and cruel. "Oh, but this isn't about punishment. This is about truth. You lived a lie for 40 years, while I carried the weight of your secret. Why should I suffer alone? You carried it." I snapped. "No, Sarah. You used it. You fed on my guilt for money, for years. And when I stopped feeding you, you unleashed it like a plague." Silence. Then her voice sharpened. "You think you can paint me as the villain? Eleanor, wake up. I'm not the liar here. You are." And then she said something that turned my blood cold. "You think James loved only you? You think you were his one and only?" The room tilted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she whispered, her voice dripping with poison, "that James wasn't just your secret. He was mine too." The line went dead. I sat there, shaking, my mind unraveling. The pieces fell into place in a pattern I had dreaded from the moment I found that photograph. Sarah hadn't just known James. She had been with him, maybe before me, maybe after me, maybe both. Which meant the truth was darker than I had feared. The child Sarah hinted about, the child who might not be Thomas's, might not just belong to James. He might belong to both of us. "Cliffa," I clutched my chest, gasping, as the possibility struck me. One of my children might not only be James's, but Sarah's as well. The night I uncovered the final truth, the rain beat against the windows like 1,000 accusing fingers. I sat in my armchair, trembling, clutching the old photograph of James and Sarah that I had found buried in the bottom of a chest I had sworn never to open. Their faces too close, too familiar mocked me. The lines of betrayal were etched in their smiles. And then it hit me. Harder than any storm outside. The whispers, the late-night disappearances, the lingering glances I had ignored out of fear. All of it came crashing together until the truth was undeniable. I clutched my chest, gasping, as the possibility struck me. One of my children might not only be James, but Sarah's as well. The thought shattered me. My blood, my family, poisoned by deceit. I wanted to scream, to tear the heavens apart with my agony, but only silence left my lips. My entire life had been a sacrifice for those I loved. And now I was left with the unbearable question, had I been raising a child born of betrayal? That night, I made a decision that would haunt me forever. I gathered every document, every photograph, every trace of their hidden affair, and locked it away in a wooden box. Then I buried it beneath the old oak tree in the garden, where no one would ever find it. I told myself it was to protect my children from the truth, but deep down, I knew it was also to protect myself from the unbearable weight of confirmation. If I never looked again, if I never spoke of it, maybe the secret could remain buried with me. Yet secrets have a way of clawing through the soil. Years later, when my children grew older, they would look at me with questions in their eyes. They would ask why their Aunt Sarah no longer came around, why I had turned cold whenever her name was spoken, why my gaze would flicker away when they asked about family history, and each time, my heart bled as I lied. I told them Sarah had moved away, that she had chosen her own path. I never told them the truth that her path had crossed mine in ways that destroyed us both. But let me confess something now. Here at the end of my story, I never stopped loving my children, no matter whose blood ran through their veins. In them, I saw my own sacrifices, my years of endurance, my endless will to give. They were innocent. They didn't deserve the punishment of sins they never committed. As for Sarah, I cannot say I forgave her, but I also cannot say I truly hated her. Hate takes too much energy, and in the end, I was left with nothing but exhaustion. She was my sister, the sister who once held my hand in childhood, who laughed with me under the summer sun, and then the sister who broke me beyond repair. James died before the truth could ever be spoken aloud. His last words to me were simple: protect the children. He never confessed, never explained, never gave me the closure I craved. Perhaps he thought silence was mercy. Perhaps he thought I already knew. Now, as I sit here at 60, my bones aching and my voice trembling, I realize I have carried this burden alone for too long. My story is not just about betrayal, it is about survival, about choosing silence when truth could destroy, and choosing love when hate would have been easier. And yet, one question still haunts me in the quiet of the night. Did I do the right thing by burying the truth? Or did I rob my children of their right to know who they truly are? Maybe I will never know. Maybe the answers are buried forever beneath that oak tree. But tonight, as I speak these words to you, I feel a strange kind of release. My story is no longer locked inside my chest. The shadows that followed me are finally stepping into the light. So tell me, my dear listener, if your own sister betrayed you in the deepest way imaginable, would you forgive her or would you bury the truth, as I did, and let silence become your only shield?